Okay, everyone, welcome to Poland. It's a brisk winter morning, about 5 degrees in Bielsko-Biała, which is not far from Krakow. So you probably see there Polish flags on the streets. That's because last November 11th, which was last Thursday, was Poland's National Independence Day. So all the streets, every house would have had Polish flags out, and they're all kind of starting to come down now. So I haven't had much of a chance to do a video in the last while, so I've just been here for a few weeks, well actually travelling over here probably for another few weeks as well. So we had an interesting journey over. We came over by car, so there was all the hassle of getting out of Ireland. We chose to drive over just to avoid all the airport COVID certification. I think driving over just gave us a certain amount of freedom. We could just stop off and do what we want, which is what we did. We got the ferry over. For getting into France, we just had to have antigen tests, and I'm actually trying to make my way now to the Old Town Square, if I can remember where it is. I think it might be straight ahead. So we had to do antigen tests. I think I paid €35 or something, and I can't. I mean, this. If you think about the PCR tests and the antigen tests, I've just come to the conclusion that they're just a racket. Really, I was saying to someone there a few days ago that I just cannot see them giving up those tests. I mean, the sheer amount of money that's been made is just beyond belief. Just look down here, you can see the lovely old cobblestone streets. And up there again, beautiful old restored buildings. There's a lot of buildings here that are a little bit run down, but just in need of a bit of tender, loving care. This area now is quite nice because we're getting closer to the Old Town Square. You can see one there now that needs a bit of work, but if you've seen a lot of old buildings in Poland before and afterwards, you'll see that the Poles are they're complete masters of restoration. You can see a little, I've been up here before actually. Nice old kind of tenements. That's an old literature museum, but you can see the buildings. Some of these buildings need a bit of work. But slowly but sure, look at this one now. I love these old kind of facades with these lines. Some pigeons. So we made our way over, and it's kind of nice to travel that way because you're free to kind of stop wherever you want. In France, we stopped off at a few places, a bed and breakfast. There was nothing about antigen tests and none of that kind of stuff. People were wearing masks, yes. I think for the most part a lot of French places were quite compliant. But, oh, that's beautiful. Look at that. So this is the Old Town Square in Bielsko-Biała. Now Bielsko-Biała is actually like two towns. You've Bielsko on one side and Biała on the other side of the river Biała. Biała is a Polish word for white, if I'm not mistaken. So really nice here. I mean, look at those facades. It's one thing I kind of love about this area of the world, The architecture, some of the architecture is magnificent. And I think here there's the original post office, which is very interesting. I know I'm getting distracted from what I was talking about, but let's have a look. So it says here, right? Bielsko formed part of the regular passenger mail coach route established in 1775 between Vienna and Lvov. The post office, introduced to Bielsko in 1744, was housed in this building from 1790 until 1873. The gateway led to large stables at present-day number 5 Vogorja Street, which I think is at the other side. So these, this little gate here, that's where the horses would have come in and out, and that's the old building there. Really nice, isn't it? Anyway, so the antigen tests, yeah, I mean, I can't see them giving those up quite easily because they're just making so much money out of them. And so I think I paid 35 for mine. My wife paid 45 from hers before we left. And I was, I hadn't done any of these tests before, and it was just like the day before we left, so I was a little bit anxious. Jeez, I hope I don't fail it or get a negative or whatever. But and I was I'd seen so much stuff online about these tests, and they might hit your blood-brain barrier and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, they barely put the swab up your nose, just a little bit inside. That was my experience anyway. Now what I did is, the day before I took the test, as a curiosity, I bought one of my own self-test ones in the local pharmacy in Ireland, and I tried it out. So we went to Verdun, to the memorial, the First World War Battle of Verdun memorial. We stopped off there on the way, and that was quite interesting. There was about like 16 in the place we were. There was like 16,000 graves, but we wanted to go inside this. There's a kind of a famous memorial there. We wanted to go inside, and it essentially it said in the doorway that you have to have a certificate to enter. So as far as our certificate had actually expired at that stage, so that was the end of it as far as we were concerned. And we just motored on then and headed to see a friend of mine in Germany, and we stayed there for a few nights. Germany was interesting in that this is a nice cafe here. It's called Happiness. I haven't been there yet, but we passed it a few days ago, walked past it, and we said, yeah, we must go in there and have a look. So in fact, I just came down that laneway just to show you that cafe. So Germany was interesting in that in Ireland I've never worn a mask over the last 18 months, but as you're probably aware, the way the law is written in Ireland, there are allowable exemptions, and I always claimed those. I would always, anytime, and not saying I didn't have hassle, or not so much hassle, but there were quite a few times where people questioned me, why don't you have your mask on? And I would always politely say, well, I have health concerns about wearing a mask, and there are allowable exemptions, and for the most part I've never really had an issue. I know I've mentioned this before on a previous video where people, like, someone calls them out about a mask and they just go ballistic, and I just don't understand that kind of behavior. Then they videotape it all and put it on the internet. I mean, why would you bother? I've always been, I try to be respectful to people, because I'm going back to Germany now in a second, a lot of people that, if you like, are required to ask you these questions, they're just doing it because they've been told by their boss to do it, and their boss is just doing it because, you know, essentially the government has told them to do it. And a lot of businesses are fearful about, you know, being fined and being reprimanded, you know, and with some kind of punishment. There's another flag there. The flags are. It's now Sunday. Flags are tending to come down by this point, but a few days ago they were just literally everywhere. So let's go down here. What was I saying? So like a lot of these businesses, I mean, they're just trying to make a living as well, and they're just, I suppose, trying to make the best of a part's circumstances. I'm talking now where masks are concerned over the last 19 months. So in Germany, Germans by nature would be very compliant. You know, if the government says do this or jump, they'll say, well, how high would you like us to jump? You know, it's just the nature of German people. They're lovely people. And they have a kind of a G system, a 2G, 3G system in their cafes and places. So depending on you know, how many times you have certain privileges, basically based on how many times whether you've, you know, got your first dose of the vaccine or second dose. And but you know, you are able to sit. I can't remember what's down here. You are able to sit outside, which was nice. And you know, as I said, I've never worn a mask in Ireland, but you know, as far, you know, if I'm in France or in Germany, it's not my country, so I kind of try to be compliant in that sense. I'll try and get away with as much as I can. But a lot of people in Germany, they're wearing the masks, but you know, the nose is exposed in that their full face isn't covered. And I do that the odd time, but in a lot of places people just, you know, no one really cared. I think we were down there a few minutes ago, you know, so no one really like, at the end of the day, people in these countries, they feel the exact same as the Irish people feel about it, you know. No one's really happy about it. No one likes really imposing the rules. But what happened is we went down to Prague in the Czech Republic, and we checked into a hotel there. Now, what did happen at the hotel was that you know, I'd booked in advance, obviously. Which way will I go? I'll go back up here. I booked in advance, but what happened was the gentleman at the reception said, you know, they're obviously required to ask it. You know, I was asking whether we had a COVID cert or some kind of proof of vaccination. Now, it's a hotel, it's the centre of Prague. Prague is a big tourist area. You know, the government are probably on top of them. So he was required to ask. I said, no, we don't. It's expired from a few days ago. And he just gave us a free antigen test, which we took in a room, you know. And to be honest, when I brought the results back down to him, he barely looked at it. So in many ways, people just don't care. But it's just something, they're just ticking boxes. What we did notice out and about in Prague, we went to I don't know if you've seen the movie. Oh, I think my battery's running low. I don't know if you've seen the movie Anthropoid, which is the story of the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich with Cillian Murphy, but it's told from the perspective of the Czech resistance. Then there was another movie came out at the same time, The Man with the Iron Heart, which told same story, but from the perspective of Reinhard Heydrich in his life. So we went to there's a lovely church there where the after they assassinated Reinhard Heydrich, they were trapped in the cellar. They were given away by a traitor, and what happened was they were essentially trapped in the crypt, and the Germans stuck fire hoses in there and flooded them out. They all committed suicide rather than be captured, but you can actually go to that crypt. That was very interesting. But after that we went to go to lunch, and we sat down at a restaurant, and the lady asked us about the COVID cert, and I said, we heard her kind of go to her boss and say something about control, and what she was referring to was these control officers that actually go along and check various places. And I know there's strict fines for restaurants, so in the end we had to leave. We went up the street, and we were in an antique shop. Then we went on and went to another restaurant, kind of a cafe, and it was the same situation. I said to her, look, well, there was tables outside, can we sit outside? And even that was forbidden. So what we did in the end was like, let's just get out of Prague, and we went on to Ostrava, which is another city. It's just an hour from the Polish border, and we went to a hotel there, and we weren't asked for anything. We went to a cafes there, weren't asked for anything. So I think, like a lot of people, like it was a bit stricter in Prague, given that it's a tourist place. I would say the government was quite, you get a lot of tourists there, so the government wants to be seen to be doing something in these places. But it seemed to me that in other places it's quite discretionary. Now in Poland, what I noticed is that a lot of people you can get quite heavy fines in Poland if you're not wearing a mask in supermarkets, up to €1,000, which is a lot for a Polish person. But many people are just, half of the people are not complying. So it's encouraging to see, it's encouraging to meet people, you shake hands, none of this kind of elbow bumping nonsense. And it's Polish postbox. So it's encouraging. Like I was believe it or not, I was at a kind of a private family gathering last night, and there was a lot of doctors there, but there was none of the mask nonsense, shaking hands, all these social etiquette rules are just to be thrown out the window here, which is very encouraging. It's very encouraging. This sense of people are just living their normal lives, and a lot of people are just ticking boxes essentially. Most people know it's a lot of nonsense. So, and that's kind of encouraging, and I'm enjoying it. I feel a certain freedom here that maybe you don't feel in Ireland. I've been looking as well the last few days. I'm going to finish up soon now because the battery's going to die. At some of these pronouncements by Obergrubenführer Holohan, that's my new name for him, where he's now making suggestions that these vaccine certificates have to be expanded. And you know what? I just find it completely horrendous. Oh, look at this beautiful old building there. Oh, there's so many old buildings like this that are just falling apart. I'm just waiting for someone to come along and restore them, like some of the other buildings I showed you the way, But Nefit and all these people are just completely out of control. Totally out of control. And frankly, I just find the whole thing very worrying, the way things are going now in Ireland. And so it's nice to be in a part of the world that understands totalitarianism, that understands the need to resist such things. And it's very refreshing. So before my battery dies, I'm going to leave it at that. So chat to you soon. Bye-bye.